60 million years ago, something moved through the rivers of what is now Colombia, a snake longer than a school bus, heavier than a small car. Not a legend. A fossil. And it raises a simple, uncomfortable question: how does a snake get this big? We call it Titanoboa, and it is one of the largest snakes that ever lived. But its size isn't just a record. It's a clue. Because the same thing that let Titanoboa grow into a giant may be the reason nothing like it exists today. I'm Lost Creatures, where we dig up what deep time buried. So let's dig up a monster and find out what really made it, and what unmade it. Start with the bones. Because we don't have a whole Titanoboa, we have pieces of many of them, and most of them are vertebrae, single bones from the spine. But a snake's vertebrate is a fingerprint of its size, and these were enormous, several times wider than the same bone in most living snakes. Set one beside the spine of a modern anaconda and the anaconda looks like a toy. They came out of a coal mine, the Cerrejon mine, in northern Colombia, from rock about 58 to 60 million years old. That's the Paleocene, the world after the asteroid. The dinosaurs had been gone for something like 6 to 8 million years, and into that emptied world, cold-blooded giants were rising. Think about what that means. The great reptiles that had ruled the land were gone. Mammals were still mostly small, cautious things, only beginning to test the empty stage. And in the hot equatorial lowlands, into that vacancy, it wasn't a mammal that grew monstrous first. It was the cold-blooded. For a few million years, the reptiles got a second act. Now, one thing the fossils settle cleanly: what kind of snake this was. Titanoboa isn't a python. It sits on the boa and anaconda side of the family tree, a boid. So when we picture it squeezing its prey, we're borrowing behavior from its living cousins. It's a fair guess. It's not something we watched. So how big, exactly? Here's where an honest channel slows down. From the size of those vertebrae, researchers estimated a length of about 12 to 13 meters, and a weight north of 1,000 kilograms, over a ton. But notice the word, estimated. That number comes from a model: measure the bone, scale up to the animal, and models carry error bars. And you might reasonably ask, how do you weigh a snake you've never seen, from a few of its bones? In living snakes, the width of a vertebra tracks tightly with the length of the whole animal. Measure enough species, draw the line, and a fossil vertebrate drops onto that line and hands you a length. It's clever, but it's also an extrapolation, and Titanoboa sits far beyond anything alive today, out where the line is stretched thin. 12 to 13 meters is the standard figure. It is not a tape measure laid along a complete skeleton, because no such skeleton exists. Keep that in your back pocket. It matters later. Which brings us back to the real question. Not just how long, but how. How do you build a snake that size at all? Here's the leading idea, and it's a beautiful one. A snake is cold-blooded. It doesn't burn food to hold a warm, steady body temperature, it takes its heat from the world around it. And there's a rule of thumb in biology: the warmer the surroundings, the bigger a cold-blooded animal can afford to get. Here's why that could be. A cold-blooded body runs on borrowed warmth, and every reaction inside it, digesting, moving, healing, speeds up or slows down with temperature. In a hot enough world, a giant snake can keep an enormous body taking over. In a cooler one, that same body would run its chemistry too slowly to sustain its own size. So in this idea, temperature doesn't just allow a big snake, it can impose an upper limit on how large a big, air-breathing cold-blooded animal is able to grow at all. So when the team that described Titanoboa looked at its size, they ran the logic backwards. A snake this large, they argued, could only work if the ancient tropics were hotter than today, with a minimum average temperature, in their model, somewhere around 30 to 34 degrees Celsius. In other words, the giant is the thermometer. Its bones aren't just telling us about a snake. They're telling us about a hotter Earth. It's a gorgeous argument. It might even be right. But, and this is important, it is contested. Other scientists pushed back hard. Some argued the math overshot the temperature, maybe by several degrees. Others pointed out that a body that huge holds its own heat for so long that it's a clumsy thermometer to begin with. Still others said size can be driven by ecology, food, competition, predators, not temperature alone. So here's the honest version, the one we'll carry. Titanoboa's size is consistent with a very warm ancient tropics. But the exact temperature? That's a model, and the models disagree. We're labeling this one a hypothesis, not a fact, and that distinction is the whole reason this story is interesting. So set the debate down for a moment, and stand in the world that Titanoboa actually lived in. It was hot, and it was wet. A sprawling lowland of slow brown rivers and swamp forest, the kind of place that today becomes coal. The evidence, where the bones lie, what lies beside them, points to a life spent mostly in the water, moving the way an anaconda moves, patient, heavy, half-submerged. And it had company, and this is where the world gets genuinely strange. The same rocks hold a turtle whose shell alone ran close to 1 3/4 meters long, the footprint of a small boat. Long snout, crocodile-like hunters patrolled the same channels. Lungfish shared the same waterways. It was a hothouse, dense, green, and heavy, and quite possibly warmer than any rainforest today, though exactly how much warmer depends on which model you trust. For a long time the assumption was simple, a snake that big must have eaten those crocodile cousins. But newer looks at its skull suggest something less cinematic and more interesting, teeth better suited to gripping fish. So the careful sentence is this: big fish were very likely on the menu, and the turtles and crocodile relatives were, at the least, neighbors sharing a crowded, dangerous river. What we can't do is hand you a scene of Titanoboa crushing a crocodile and call it a fact. The fossils don't go that far. Picture it instead the way the evidence allows, an animal the length of a bus, lying still in warm, tea-colored water, waiting in a green world that had, for a few million years, handed its throne to the cold-blooded. And then that world changed. Over the tens of millions of years that followed, after some intensely warm spells early on, the planet's long-term trend bent toward cooling. Not overnight, and not in a straight line, but across ages. And if the leading idea is even partly right, if giant, cold-blooded bodies really do depend on a hot world, then as the Earth cooled, the window that made a Titanoboa possible would have quietly closed. I want to be careful here, because this is the softest part of the story. We do not have a fossil ledger showing Titanoboa cooling itself out of existence. What we have is a link: warmth allows giants, and the warmth went away. That's an inference, not a verdict. But here's the part that stays with me. Titanoboa itself is gone, but its broader family isn't. The anacondas gliding through the Amazon today aren't Titanoboa shrunk down, they're its relatives, on the same cold-blooded branch of the tree, running the same playbook in a cooler world that may no longer leave the same room for titans. And the record isn't closed. In 2024, another giant snake, Vasuki, was described from India, and by some estimates it may rival, or even beat, Titanoboa's length. The measurements depend, again, on the model. Which is the honest note to end on: the largest snake that ever lived is still an open question. Deep time keeps a few of its monsters hidden, and every so often, a coal mine hands one back. I'm Lost Creatures. Follow along, and we'll keep digging.